Hi everyone, welcome again to the Confident Hypnotherapist podcast. And this week I am thrilled to be able to present Laurie Hammond as my partner coughs badly in the background there. I hope you're all enjoying. He hasn't got anything, don't worry, to those listening. Laurie, thank you so much for your time joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Lawrence. I am honored to be here. And it's so good to meet you.
So good to meet you as well. And I was really hoping to get a chance to chat with you because only recently you produced a fantastic training around imposter syndrome. And I felt that this was a topic that was really relevant to this podcast and one that we hadn't really had a chance to explore yet with someone. So thank you immensely for saying yes to my invitation and joining me today. I guess an interesting place to start would be about your own experience in coming to hypnotherapy, what it was that brought you to it. Perhaps tell me a little bit about that. Where did this love of hypnotherapy start for you?
So I was actually raised in a very strict religious home, and I was raised to be quite afraid of hypnosis. I thought that I wasn't allowed to watch Scooby-Doo because there was hypnosis on the show. Yes. So when I had struggled with my weight my whole life, just kind of always yo-yoing up and down. And underneath that, the outward weight fluctuations was this internal battle and almost like a sense of bondage. And, I thought of myself as a food addict, and I had been diagnosed with binge eating disorder. And I just felt so broken. And I had tried everything. I had seen therapists. I had tried every diet, pill, and potion. And I thought, the only way I'm going to fix this is if someone else controls my mind. And I didn't understand that that's not what hypnosis is. But I last-ditch effort. And I went and saw a couple local hypnotherapists. It was really interesting because I had the hardest time finding someone I felt comfortable seeing, because I couldn't find anyone who showed their picture, who was, making me feel comfortable out the gate. And it wasn't a great experience for me. And I had been listening to Mike Mandel's podcast, Brain Software. And so starting to kind of have rapport with him and Chris Thompson. And so when I didn't have a great experience with those hypnotists, I thought, I really think this is the answer. I'm just going to learn hypnosis myself. And the unexpected side effect was that it just obliterated a lifetime of depression for me, where, it's not always sunshine and roses. Even now, I still will have my days, but I went from being the kind of person who was chronically and clinically depressed to the kind of person who is just perpetually happy. And I love life, and I understand now how to control my own mind, and that I'm in charge of my state. It was such an amazing experience that I decided that I wanted this to be my life's work.
And you mentioned on your website that you use hypnosis to dehypnotize yourself from those limiting beliefs that you had around yourself that was keeping that weight there. Can you tell me a little bit more about that experience for you?
Yeah. So I realized how much, and this is something I'm always gradually finding, learning more and more just how simple it is to step out of these limiting behaviors. So I told myself, I read all these books about the problem. I was so focused on the problem and what's wrong with me and how to resist these certain foods and how to only eat a certain amount, that it was actually keeping me more obsessed and more stuck. And every time I beat myself up and felt guilty, I was actually keeping my unconscious mind focused on that overeating behavior. So for me, when I started to learn to be more solution focused and think about what life would be like on the other side of those food struggles, and start to focus on how great life could be and all the good choices that I made throughout the day, it helped me realize that I had really been hypnotizing myself with my self-talk and with my focus on the problem. And that when you step out of that and start to focus on the solution and start to talk nice to yourself, everything gets easier.
Absolutely. And, I think that's one of the key things, because, even as hypnotherapists, I think there's a perception out there from the greater community that therapists must have all their problems sorted out, all their inner demons done. And the reality is, of course, is that we're just as human as anyone else, and we probably beat ourselves up as much as anyone else does. Which I guess also slides nicely into that topic about imposter syndrome, which I find a fascinating one. I've personally experienced imposter syndrome over the course of my career. Prior to hypnotherapy, I was working in creative recruitment for 15 years and very successful there. But every day I still felt like, I wonder when they're going to discover that this is all of a fluke. And I've just kind of been successful by accident. And that I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of going along. And it's interesting in hindsight to reflect back on that and realize that I actually did know what I was doing. I did it very well, but I was convincing myself quite strongly that I had no idea. What's been your own experience with imposter syndrome?
It's so interesting to hear you say that. The more people I talk to, the more I think that just kind of comes with the territory. And it's the people that are successful and that are moving forward are the ones who move forward anyway. Like they have that, I call it the imposter monster's voice in their ear, and they hear that voice and they take action anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, part of the training that I did with Mike Mandel, he teaches how important it is to speak with authority and to come across as an expert with a sense of prestige, and to do that even if you're shaking in your boots, to still present yourself as confident. And he helped me understand that I'm actually doing my client a service by presenting myself that way. And he also helped me understand that if I've ever been able to show up with confidence in the world, then that is a characteristic that is available to me, and that I can unlock that by essentially assuming the posture of a confident person. So it was nice to kind of have that permission to, I don't really consider it faking it till you make it or pretending. It's more of an unlocking of an attribute that's already inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been thinking about doing hypnosis for quite some time. I was a hairstylist, and I used a lot of the tools that I learned with hypnosis to help my clients, who pour their heart out to me in the chair, unlock their own internal resources. But I was afraid to start going full time. And I realized I'm never going to do this unless I essentially like mama bird myself out of the nest. So I quit my job as a hairstylist and started doing this full time. And it was a sense of perhaps desperation, for lack of a better word, that made me force myself to take action, even though I was afraid, even though I wasn't sure I was ready. Mm-hmm. I essentially forced myself to do it by removing my safety net. And the amazing thing that happened is, because I make myself a little more public and I put a lot of videos up on Facebook, I have people reach out to me. I've had 2 people today reach out to me and say, I'm a trained hypnotherapist. I want to start taking action, but I'm not ready yet. I'm so afraid that I'm going to mess up or say the wrong thing or break somebody. And so I realized that it's a very common experience, and it just helped me realize that I'm not broken, that I'm perfectly normal, and that imposter monster voice is with everyone. And so it helps me now when I feel that fear. It's almost like a challenge, and it's easier for me to rise to the occasion and do it afraid.
I absolutely love something that you've just said about unlocking the attribute that already exists within you. Quite often we're told to, act as if, and that's all well and good, but if you don't truly believe it, even if you're acting as if, I think that still manages to sneak through unconsciously. Whereas that whole notion of unlocking an attribute that already exists inside you, I think is far more empowering and far more authentic in how you can tap into that ability to just be present and real with your clients. You mentioned there about posture and things like that, but what other things do you think people can do to be able to unlock that attribute that they have already within them?
That's a great question. I really think that we learn everything we do by modeling. So I have a brand new grandbaby. She's 6 months old, and I watch her. She doesn't even understand yet that she's separate from her mother. And she's learning everything she does by observing the people around her. And so often we think we're being inauthentic by stepping outside our comfort zone and acting in a new way. But we've learned everything we do by modeling the people, the people that raised us and the people that we surround ourselves by. So for me, when I started making video, when I started working with clients, I didn't really know how to do it on my own. And so I would model my mentor, Mike Mandel, or when I started making video, it's, there's this NLP technique called Circle of Excellence. I'm sure you're familiar with, where you put all the attributes that you would like to have inside a circle, and then you step inside that circle and take them on. So I would stand back and I would look at the place where I was going to stand to make my video, and I would imagine Mike Mandel doing it, or Brene Brown, or some powerful Oprah Winfrey, just someone who's really good at articulating and getting the point across. And I would notice their posture and their facial expressions and the tonality of their voice, and imagine the thoughts that they were thinking. And then I would go and step in that spot, almost as if I was stepping in their body, and make the video as that person rather than as timid, unsure, imposter Lori. I would do it as that person. And now when I stand in front of a camera, that automatically exudes from me, and it's become my own.
And I have to agree. Watching your videos is always a treat, because you do come across being just genuine and real and lovely, which is wonderful. And you certainly mentioned some fantastic influences there. Like Mike Mandel's just amazing. What he and Chris have done is just incredible. Nowadays people like Freddie Jacquin and Dan Coundell, both of who, you've done some podcasts with yourself in the past, both of who are just incredibly grounded people, but exude confidence. Dan was telling me that he started being a hypnotherapist, or started doing hypnosis back when he was 12 to help him with study. And I just looked at him and said, "Well, I think I was playing with He-Man dolls still when I was 12 years old." So, just what he's been able to do in such a short amount of time is incredible. Yes. And I think, looking at these people, it's very easy to get starstruck, just because they do come across as being so confident and so capable and so unstoppable in their ability to do their work. How much of that do you think is mindset for them? How much of it do you think is them waking up each morning deciding that this is the version of them they're going to put on?
Yeah, now having done this Imposter Monster podcast, I have a different perspective. I think I shared when I interviewed Dan that when I heard his presentation at HypnoThoughts, I thought, this guy he's been doing this forever. He's naturally confident. Just, my imposter monster was saying, you could never be like this. And I was thinking, this guy is just too cool for me. And so when I interviewed him, I realized he struggles with the same self-doubt as the next person. It's just a matter of continuing to take action anyway, and sometimes doing it when he was just in the absolute depths of despair, just struggling with his own demons, and doing it anyway. And Freddie Jacquin, he's become a dear friend, and I know that he has that same voice in his ear, and he just keeps moving forward anyway. I think the trick, at least for me, I can't speak for them, but it is using that voice in the ear as an actual motivation forward, instead of as something to step back.
I think there's the biggest challenge, though, isn't it? Because let's put it this way, I see people that even recently posted in Facebook groups things like, I have a client who wants to do phobia, and I'm just not comfortable doing phobia. And I think it's great when people niche and know what their strengths and know what their weaknesses are, but also I think when they're stopping themselves from stepping forward into opportunities, it's really allowing their own limiting beliefs to show in that moment. What advice would you have for people like that who perhaps are keeping themselves small or holding themselves back from exploring new possibilities there?
I really think it's a comfort zone issue. Our unconscious mind really wants to keep us safe, and it wants to keep us comfortable. And sometimes that discomfort is even, for me, it was comfortable to be overeating because it was familiar. I knew how to do it. So even though it was making me miserable, it was my comfort zone. So a lot of times people They think they're procrastinating. They think that they are, I just need to learn one more technique.
Yeah.
I just need to get the perfect hypnosis chair. What they're really doing is they're falling for a trap of the imposter monster that's just keeping them in their comfort zone. And I actually think that you can train yourself to get out of your comfort zone in kind of easy and enjoyable ways. So I have a protocol that I'll do with I don't know if protocol is the right word, but my people in my weight loss program, I'll have them brush their teeth with their opposite hand. So if they usually brush with their right hand, I'll have them switch to their left hand. And what happens is it feels so strange. You have to really think hard about how to move your elbow and your shoulder, and you have like toothpaste dripping down your face. And I say, recognize that discomfort and say to yourself, uncomfortable things soon become automatic. And what it does is it trains you to recognize that discomfort as an opportunity to grow and expand. And once a person starts to step out, for me, the first time I did a Facebook Live, and I wasn't sure I would stumble over my words, and I probably did, and I still do. Once I did it, it was almost like this rush, this amazing feeling of, I did something new. I leveled up a little bit. I can keep growing and learning. And so you start to recognize that discomfort of doing something that's awkward and hard with an opportunity to expand really as a person and get out of that comfort zone. And once you start getting comfortable getting outside that comfort zone, it really becomes easier and easier to say, okay, I don't know how to do phobias, but I'm just going to try this and see. And another really helpful thing is having a playful attitude. I was just listening this morning to
I've said this myself. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast with Andrew Huberman, who is a scientist that studies behavior change. And he said that one of the prime states that we can be in is an attitude of playfulness. It allows us to learn. It allows us to tap into all of our internal resources, to, tap into those things that we don't realize that we know. When we start just to be like, what if I could do this? What if I can help someone with a phobia?
I am so amazed you said that, because this is one of the things I have used myself. Two things I've used myself over time is, if I am asked to do something and there's a big voice in my head screaming no, then that means I have to do it. I just have to say yes. And the other one is, when I feel like I'm taking things too seriously, I need to start playing. Yes. And as soon as I bring that playful attitude of just playing with the idea, playing with what's there, it feels suddenly so much more achievable and real. So it's fascinating that that you say that. Yeah
I love that.
Mm-hmm. That's thrown me so much that I completely forgot everything else. You mentioned about Facebook Lives as well, and I don't think there's a single person on the planet who really enjoys being in front of the camera. I absolutely hate being in front of the camera. But there's probably not a week going by where I'm not in front, especially nowadays. How do we exist in this world without being in front of a camera on a daily basis?
It's so strange.
But I think it's also about giving yourself permission to just be authentic. And if you make a mistake or say something funny or silly, you just kind of go, oh yeah, that's part of being human. And I think that's what people like as well.
I think so. I think, it's, when we think that someone is, way up here and we can never achieve what they've achieved, it can be helpful to see them stumble and show their humanity. And it really does build rapport and help people realize, okay, I can trust this person. And if they can do it, I can do it. That's the biggest thing I want people to realize. There's nothing about me that has given me has allowed me to do what I need to do that another person can't access in themselves.
I guess, there might be people watching this and going, that's all well and good, but I'm stuck in this place where this voice is telling me that I need to do another course, or that I'm still missing some piece of information or insight or technique that is preventing me from making the change that I want to with clients. What would you say would be the first step to them to help step away from that, self-talk that's having them believe that they're perhaps just not good enough as a therapist?
Yeah. There, I was gonna do a Yoda quote. I'm not sure I'm gonna remember it. Yoda says, name your fear you must. If overcome it you can. That's not right, but
You did it very Yoda-like, so we're going to accept
yes, very.
that. And you didn't quote the usual "do or do not, there is no try," which everyone tends
Yes.
to go for with Yoda. So,
So I think a lot of times when we simply hone in on what the imposter monster is telling us, that then gives us autonomy over it. That helps us be able to change it. So perhaps even write down in a journal or on a piece of paper in your handwriting, because that taps into the mind in a unique way.
mhm.
Write down what it is that you're saying to yourself that's keeping you back. That self-talk is part of the formula for keeping you stuck. And when you uncover that self-talk that's often just unconscious, you don't really realize what you're saying to yourself, you can look at it with fresh eyes, and you could even imagine kind of getting back and getting some perspective. Every time I fly, if I have a window seat, I'll always look out and look down through the clouds way below and imagine that I'm looking at my life and looking at, different situations that I'm struggling with from that perspective. And all of a sudden I realize all these things that you can't think about when you're, right here and everything seems so big and scary. And then you can ask, my favorite empowering question is, how do I want to feel?
Yeah.
And just start journaling. I want to feel like I'm ready to start helping people. I want to feel like I have everything I need to start making a difference in people's lives. I want to feel like if I just have Freddie Jacquin's arrow technique, I can help this person with a phobia. I want to think about how amazing it's going to feel when someone calls me on the phone and says, thank you for helping me with stop stuttering. You've changed my life. And just starting to get in that headspace, you're creating a formula for fixing your imposter syndrome. When you start, two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So when you start rehearsing that positive, powerful self-talk, as you think about that situation that used to feel overwhelming for you, all of a sudden you start to realize that you do have a lot more resources than you realized, and you might be a lot more ready than you think.
You raised something really interesting there as well that had a thought go through my head, because you talked about Freddie's arrow technique there, and there's a part of that technique where you go right up high, and then you kind of say that in a moment you're going to go through that, and it's going to be the last time that you feel that again. It's going to be intense, but it's the last time you feel it. And I wonder how many people, there's this thing about hypnosis where you need to be able to authentically believe what it is that you're helping to guide a person through. And I think that quite often when it comes with hypnotic phenomena, this could be a stumbling block for some people, in a sense that, you ask for an arm catalepsy, and there's that fear of, what if what if the arm doesn't rise? What if it doesn't become rigid? What if I say to them that they're going to go through this pain one last time, and they don't, they just kind of sit there and go, it's, mind you, that was a terrible impersonation of someone who didn't go through it. What advice would you give to those sorts of hypnotherapists in terms of how they can tap into the belief that what they're doing can make a difference for someone? I don't know if that question is making sense, but
it does make sense to me. And I think probably because I have done that what if game with myself so often, I still do it.
Classic anxiety question, isn't it? What if it doesn't happen?
And so this is where playfulness can really come in handy. I listened to a Jason Linett interview recently with a hypnotist. I'm not remembering his name offhand, but he's very young and he does stage hypnosis, and his content has gone viral, and he just is killing it. And he talked about how he went out there and he practiced street hypnosis, and he didn't know if it would work.
I don't know that. I think it might be that Zach guy.
Yes.
I've seen his stuff and he's incredible.
Yes, he is. And he said when he first started doing it, it didn't work. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And he just got comfortable with the idea of failure. And so I think one of the most powerful things a person can tell themselves if they're what ifing themselves is to add a one little 2-letter word to the beginning of that sentence and say, so what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
So what? And realize, take some pressure off of yourself. Maybe it won't work. And then your client doesn't know what's supposed to happen. You can just imagine that it's working perfectly. And if it doesn't work, just say, good job. That's you're doing this. You're doing really well. Let's go to the next thing.
Exactly right. And what's the alternative? You just don't do it, and therefore you don't get the experience, and therefore you never actually manage to be comfortable with it. And the only way you're going to become comfortable with it is to step outside that comfort zone and to be able to experience it enough times to get a sense of when it is working and when it isn't working. And I think the other part of that is about making sure people don't feel like they're necessarily there to cure people, or that they must always get the 100% outcome that they're expecting from the work they do with people as well. Yeah. But yes, I think that they kind of some of the things that do come up when we're looking at why people might have that fear of failure, or what holds them back there.
I agree. Yes.
I won't keep you too much longer, but I guess just to ask one last question, if you could go back in time and to give yourself some advice at the start of your own career, what would be the most important thing that you would give to yourself as a suggestion there?
What a cool question. I don't even know. I don't know that I would give myself advice as much as just encouragement. And I would just say, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You are stronger and braver and more resilient than you realize. And there's an amazing adventure in front of you. And that's what I would say to anyone who's listening right now. This is an adventure.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, Laurie, and to explore perhaps some of the training opportunities you may have coming up, what's the best way they can do that for you? How can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is trancypants.com, like fancy pants, but Trancy. It's funny because I've always been a person who tells myself the story that I'm not creative. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to start changing my story. And I literally just kind of went into a trance myself and asked my unconscious to give me a cool website. And that's what I came up with. And it's been really fun. And that's where people can get a hold of me. You can email me at lori@trancypants.com. And I love hearing from people. I love talking about this stuff. It's fascinating to me.
Are you planning to do another round of your imposter syndrome trainings anytime soon?
It's so funny because I've had so many people reach out to me just today that I just threw something online this morning that said, hey, if I do another imposter monster training, would you be interested? And I haven't even gone in to see who's clicking on that post, but I think that's around the corner. The last one was so well received.
You'll have to make sure that you keep me informed, so that if it does, we'll make sure that this runs prior to that, so that everyone can check it out and discover it, because I think it is something that a lot of people don't really know about. I find when I talk to people about imposter syndrome, either they seem to know everything about it, or there's kind of this very Scooby-Doo there for a moment again.
Yes, I love it.
And I think that when people explore a little bit more and understand what it is, they kind of go, oh yeah, I know people like that, or I've experienced something like that. So I think it's definitely something worth exploring and having in your toolkit as a therapist in order to be able to help people when that issue rises.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today, Laurie. It's been an absolute treat chatting with you, and I wish you all the absolute best.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's been my pleasure.